Welcome to the Dream Journal. From the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, the Dream Journal is a weekly show where we explore the power of nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with listeners like you. A dream can be meaningful even if you don't know what it means. Today's music is called The Great Majority, by which of course we mean those who have passed away. Dreams and death. Do dreams show us what it'll be like to be dead? Also, dreams close to death, precognitive dreams, and visitation dreams. Our guest this week is Jenna Farr Ludwig. I am your host, Catherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and welcome to the Dream Journal. Welcome, Jenna. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Hi. Good. So glad to have you here. I know you're just up in the Bay Area, and it feels like it's
Berkeley.
Nice. Berkeley. I got to have local folks on. So Jenna Farr Ludwig is a certified dream guide and spiritual mentor with a Master's of Arts in Transpersonal Studies and over 40 years of experience. Jenna has published poetry and articles in numerous periodicals and is in the process of writing a book about dreams and synchronicities. You can contact Jenna through her website, jennafarrludwig.com, JennaFarr, jennafarrludwig.com, and also JennaLLudwig.substack.com. Did I get that right?
I think so.
Okay.
Not sure.
Jenna L. Ludwig at Substack.com. Okay. So we are talking today about death. Somehow, why not? All right. Right in the time for the equinox, the vernal equinox, everything's getting green. Let's think about death. Because it's always true. It's always there. And it's like one of the most valuable spiritual practices through the ages has been the idea of impermanence and keeping firmly in front of ourselves the fact that this is not an endless ride that we are on, and that there will be more. And it's the biggest mystery of all. I would say something that we don't know for sure now, but that all of us will one day know. What does happen when we die? Now, how does that connect to dreaming, Jenna? Just ask you a little question to get started.
We'll start with a small question.
Yeah, a small question. Right.
Well, I think what I should do is start with a backstory.
Sure.
If that's good for
Totally,
you.
yeah.
My story is, when I was young, I had two really important dreams about death. Mm-hmm. When I was 16 years old, my mother died suddenly. And the night before she died, I dreamed that she fell off a cliff so deep I could not see where her body was.
Whoa.
So, as you might imagine, aside from the grief, I was, all this opened up in me a real curiosity and a fear of death.
Right.
So, 3 years later, when I was 19 years old, I had another life-changing dream about death. And in that dream, I was in an airplane crash, but I didn't know it. I was in the airplane and I was looking down through a window, and I said to the person next to me, "Oh my gosh, look at those poor people searching for their loved ones in the wreckage." And the person standing next to me said, "Those bodies in the crash are ours."
Ooh.
And we died in that crash.
Uh-huh.
So
okay.
I didn't even really have time to process this before we landed. And
Wait, you had the dream on the plane? Wait.
In the dream, I'm in a plane.
Okay. But
This is all a dream.
All in the dream. Okay, yes.
Yes. And so we left the dream and we were met by this goddess figure. She was like a guardian. She had very broad shoulders, very tall, dark hair. And she just motioned for us to follow her. And we went around a path, following her down this path. And we got into this room. Each one of us were to spin this wheel to see when we were going to come back to Earth.
Okay.
And I know I'm 19 years old. I'm a Catholic girl. I know nothing about this stuff, about reincarnation or anything. And so my date came up October 24th, 1947, which was the date of my birth.
Huh.
So that was quite an astounding dream. And then when I left the room where we were to spin the wheel, I thought, oh my gosh, I need to be back on that plane. And as I thought this, immediately thought it, I was back on the plane and then headed toward my life, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, so those, yeah.
Or toward the crash. I mean, that's, that, you know, one of the most striking parts about that dream for me is to like be looking down at the crashed plane and hearing someone say, oh, those are our bodies.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, later I talked about PMH Atwater, who is a near-death experience researcher, and she told me that this dream is what she calls a near-death experience dream.
Okay.
Which it really felt like it. After I had the dream, you know, I'm 19, I'm Catholic, I really don't know anything about this information. My elder sister, who was reading Jung and Edgar Cayce and all sorts of metaphysical authors at that time, turned me on to Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Carl Jung's biography, autobiography. Well, I guess it was actually he was dead when it was published. But then I also started reading about Edgar Cayce, and so then I was on a lifelong quest of transpersonal studies from that point on.
Okay.
So, yeah, those two dreams got me interested in death dreams.
Right. And now something that you know that I want to like reassure myself, because I was one who has many death dreams. I mean, it's rarely me that dies, although sometimes, but there's a lot of nightmares. I tend to have a lot of intense dreams. And, you know, let's be clear here that the vast majority of dreams about dying are really more about transformation than about the death of the self or the loved one or anything like that. That's certainly been my experience. And do we have any... What do you have to say about that? Does that make sense to you?
Oh, I absolutely agree about that. You know, there is Wanda Berg wrote a story, She Who Dreams, A Journey Through Healing through Dreamwork. And she dreamed of her death. She dreamed she would die at a certain age. And actually, what the dream did was it told her about that she had cancer, so she got a diagnosis, and it guided her toward treatment and wellness. And she believes she is alive because of the intimate engagement with her dream work. But most dreams about death aren't really, they are about transformation. They aren't about death. And death dreams have more symbolism, different kinds of symbolism. I have different categories of dreams I've got here, and examples of dreams of how people have dreamed, you know, pre-diagnosis and post-diagnosis and right before death and visitation dreams. So there's all sorts of different kinds of symbolism. But mostly when we dream, we die in a dream. We're not actually dying. We're transforming. There's something going on in our life. Exactly.
So and it's scary because that's, you know, usually it's a part of me that I identify with, and I don't want to let go of, even if it's time for me to let go of that part of me. And so it can be scary and painful, and yet it's ultimately a good thing that I am letting that part of me die. Like that's how I look at these dreams. But right. You know, I want to just kind of set the stage there, and yet there are certain dreams that do, like the one about your mother. I am really quite moved by the dream about your mother falling off a cliff and you can't see her body, and the next day she died unexpectedly. She wasn't even sick, or that was...
She died in a car accident. There's more to that story, but she ultimately died in a car accident.
Right.
It's a long story, but we won't go into that.
Right. But it's okay. How do you know? Yeah. How do you distinguish versus, like, it could be, oh, well, there's the mother part of me that I'm not having access to anymore, and then maybe that's a good thing, right? You know, that's how I would look at that dream if it was if I didn't have something, actually
a mother
happen.
who actually died.
Right, that's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Totally. So how do you tell? How do you know
Right.
whether it's a transformation dream or it's really a warning, or like the cancer dream you talked about, that it could actually be a warning about a loved one or yourself? I mean, do you have any sense of, is there a difference, or how can you tell?
When I've had two husbands who died of cancer at home with
man.
hospice.
Wow.
And particularly with my first husband, Gene, we started having dreams about his illness like a year before he was actually diagnosed. But we didn't know how to interpret these dreams,
Right.
I don't think people actually do have a sense, because we were in our 40s. Who would think, this was coming up?
Exactly.
Maybe if you're in your 80s and you start having dreams like that, you think, well, I'm closer to death and I will examine that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But we had signs, and that's what I call a pre-diagnosis dream.
Yeah. Okay.
In my second husband, Harold, started dreaming about car crashes. And so it isn't like he dreamed he died, but he started dreaming about, and one ultimate, before he was diagnosed, he dreamed he was in a car and it was on the interstate and it fell off the interstate and it completely smashed to bits. He didn't necessarily see himself in that dream dying, but he saw this car. So that is kind of an indication, that something's going on.
Yeah, right.
It was a pretty intense dream. And I think the difference between, this is symbolic of, maybe the mother part of me is dying, is that they seem so real. Everyone I've talked to who has had pre-death or death dreams, especially closer, terminal, with a terminal illness, I think they think these are so real. They feel like, and I know my husband felt that way. He woke up from a few dreams where he said, it was like I was there. I woke up and I was so disoriented. So they're very, very real. And
okay.
I've got a couple examples, but I can give you.
Oh, well, why don't you give us one example, please, if that's okay? Yeah.
Okay, sure. So Jean dreamed that a tree we lived in a 5-acre stand of woods, and he dreamed one of our oak trees very close to our house was hewn down, fell onto the ground, and it felt like an earthquake. And he woke up and he said, oh my God, it was so real. It was like I could feel this tree. I could feel its death. And of course we didn't know that meant his death.
Right.
But that was one example of something like that.
Yeah, thank you. So I have we have like a kind of list of different kinds of dreams, but I want to kind of go to the question of the connection what am I trying to say? Like, what does the dreams have to say about what it's like to be there? Or what's going to happen to us when we die? Because this is like nobody really knows. Some people think they know and had experiences that they know, but I don't think we have agreement of what happens. And and I think the Tibetan dream yogi is the practice of Tibetan dream yoga has to do with practicing during dreams for death. So the idea is to become lucid during your dreams so that as you're dying that you can maintain that lucidity and kind of enter into that death with your eyes wide open. And so they draw this parallel between dreaming and dying. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about that.
Yes, I do know a little bit about that. I haven't practiced that myself. So I don't really know. My perspective is more of a Jungian perspective, and because I have read mostly about that in my life, I know that Marie-Louise von Franz has written a book on dying and death. And in that book, she gives us many examples of annals. She was a Jungian therapist, and she gives many examples of analsands she works with. And her conclusion is that, we don't know.
Okay.
Obviously.
Right.
She does not claim to prove that life after death in dreams, but that dreams do give us, they allow us a profound exploration of death, which is like a bridge between our life and death. And they offer comfort and insight into the final phase. And Jung believed that death dreams are a form of the last part of the individuation process.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So if my readers want to know what that is, it's the integration of all parts of the psyche, the conscious and the unconscious. And so it becomes a part of the constellation of the self.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
So I don't know if that's all.
Okay. Where to go from here? Because like there's the question, like do you remember the old movie, I think it was called Flatliners, Kiefer Sutherland, about these kids that, they practice dying and bring themselves back to life by these means. And what they found is that each person had a different experience after they died based on their beliefs.
That's true.
And that seemed an interesting idea.
And I believe it is true. Mm-hmm. And when we study near-death experiences, that's true of those as well.
Okay.
People will go through there's a way that near-death experiences unfold, but it's individual to the person having the experience. So if you believe in Jesus meets you. Mm-hmm. If you believe there's nothing, I've got an interesting thing about that, about a visitation dream, but I'll come back to that.
Okay.
But whatever your belief is, yes, I believe that your dreams are, and Jung believed there should be a myth about dreams. Because our rational self is not, can't handle the terror that we might feel, coming with a terminal illness, coming into death.
Well, yeah, people are facing death in very immediate ways. All of us, could have that car accident like your mom at any moment. And yet there are people who have a diagnosis like a cancer or other kinds of diagnoses which makes death much more imminent. And I've had just this morning 3 different people tell me their specific beliefs about death, and they're all different.
They are. They are.
And yet maybe that's valuable. Maybe that's part of like you said, a myth, like your personal myth about death, like what is going to happen is valuable.
Right. And Jung believed there were certain steps, certain parts of real death dreams coming from terminal. I'm basically talking about people who are on the road with terminal illness. Yep. They know that this is coming. And he believes that the symbolism was contributed to the individuation process, because some symbols are symbols of wholeness, like circles and mandalas and journeys toward light, or crossing over the river. Mm-hmm. And also, when we're really close to death, we have a way of, surrendering. We surrender. We transcend our ego and our shadow and all those things that are keeping us tied on a wheel. And we think, well, this is it.
Right.
I've got to make some kind of transformation here. And so.
Right. Well, that's something that is interesting to, the dreams close to death people have as they are approaching death. Like if they, there often is a certain amount of surrender involved, kind of, I would say, hopefully, because there are cases where people are kicking and screaming till the last moment, even though they know what's approaching. And that just seems so painful to approach such a big transition so unwillingly, that some level of surrender, dreams of journeys, arriving, crossing the river, like you mentioned, those are wonderful metaphors for dying.
Yes. Can I say one more dream?
Yeah.
My husband had a beautiful dream, Gene, my first husband, where he met a woman, an ancient woman, outside of our house in Michigan in the woods, and she had drawn, or had implanted a mandala in the ground. And she told him, this is your symbol because of your love of the earth, and this will carry on after you're gone. So that was a really beautiful dream.
Right. So the mandala, the symbol of wholeness, the earth.
Yeah. And I have known people kicking and screaming going to death. I've been a death surrogate for a very good friend who was an atheist. And she did not believe in life after death. And she was very bitter that she hadn't had time to finish her book that she had been working on. And that was her big regret. And then I had a visitation dream from her later. And it was, if this means anything.
Right.
She told me in the dream, she said, Jenna, I was so wrong about that.
Oh.
And I never would have thought that this person would have said that to me, because she was a staunch atheist. She was a psychotherapist and a very intelligent woman. And I never thought she would come to me and say, I was so wrong about that.
Oh, interesting.
So,
wow. And there's, visitation dreams are similar to death dreams, that we often dream about loved ones. Sometimes there are deceased loved ones. And so how do you tell whether it's you working out your issues with that loved one or if it's an actual visitation? But, in this case, it seemed like she was specifically addressing you.
Yes. She was. The dream was longer. And I looked at her in the dream and I said, oh, we can't be doing this. You're dead. and that's when she said, oh, I was so wrong about that.
Oh, well, it's nice to think that she got some relief after dying, even though she was so reluctant to go there. Because, we're all going to go there. And, there's just so many metaphors kind of swirling around through my mind about death, and so visitation dreams can be like a kind of a comfort. They can be a way for us to relieve. I've heard people. I think I had a caller once talking about her whole progression of dreams about her mother over the years, who after she had died, and just a whole changing of her relationship to her mother, and also her mother like accepting what had happened, and just a beautiful evolution in this process.
That is, and I have had those dreams about my first husband, Gene. It's confusing because I've had both two husbands who have died, but Gene, I have been having dreams about him. He died 31 years ago, and these dreams have been an evolution of our relationship. He was so young when he died, and we were just working out, some of the issues of living together and of being a married couple. And so, yes, we've been, I dream about him all the time. And I do believe some are visitation and some aren't. I just think that I can feel the difference, the numinosity or the realness of those dreams just feel different.
Right. And it kind of brings up to me the idea that if we're really visiting these realms while we're dreaming, are we really getting a little taste of death? Because when we're dreaming, we are not tied to a physical body. We usually have some kind of a body, but it's not always like my waking life body. And sometimes I have no body at all. I might be a disembodied perspective, or I could be some animal or something. And so, is there some kind of a taste of death that we're getting while we're dreaming? That is there something about that we really get to connect with even while we're alive.
True. And I think that's one of the values of dreams about death. Is that we do get that, and we do, as Jung said, have a myth or have an idea or some kind of experience about death before we actually die.
Right.
And that's the whole Buddhist concept as well, is to feel really into the dissolution of the body, while we know that the consciousness, we don't know, but I know, the consciousness continues and goes on.
Yeah, well, we don't know. I mean,
no, we don't.
We really don't. Or maybe it's a question of dissolving into the universe and becoming one with the universe. What consciousness goes on, but we're a drop in the ocean, or maybe we have these individual souls that continue from life to life, or maybe we blend with other souls and then split apart, and then we're pieces of several different souls. Some people believe we have like simultaneous reincarnations, that you can actually meet your own incarnation in this life, both alive at the same time, because who knows what time is. there's just so many possibilities.
Right. Boggles your mind.
It does. And yet it's so important, but it's one of those things that we're never gonna know until we know, and then we'll know what we know.
Exactly.
So we just have a few minutes before the break, and I wonder if you have anything else you want to bring in before the break, any last examples, and then afterwards we'll take some callers. I know we have a caller or two already lined up, and some questions in the studio possibly. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up before the break, Jenna?
Sure. Yes, yeah. There is one thing. There's a really good book for people who do have loved ones who are terminal and dealing with this. And it's Dr. Christopher Kerr, Kerr, and his book is Death is But a Dream. And he writes a beautiful book about dreams, help to process emotion and work through trauma, give terminally ill, that's a hard thing to say, patients back a sense of personal control, which is one thing I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
Some people who are dying are, before they get to the point where they're unconscious or not conscious enough, are not interested in dreams. They're not interested in you talking about dreams. But the caregivers do need some kind of support, and they do have dreams about their loved one going. And Christopher, Dr. Kerr, believes that the medical profession should include this in their therapy and in their dealing with families. Talk about dreams. Bring back the wisdom of the inner self.
Yes. And,
and let, so it's a very big comfort. And it's also a comfort to the person who would like it, the dying person, but death is always up to the person who is leaving.
That's true. But, I think I have read that book. I love that book. I'd love to get Dr. Kerr on the show. That there's, that often the dreams or even visions of people who are dying are dismissed as hallucinations, and I think that's just missing out on a wealth of connection and insight.
Exactly. That is a very beautiful book. He was burnout as a regular physician, got into hospice, and realized that death is not it's not a failure.
Yeah.
It is part of the process of life. We're all gonna go. And he envisioned, and I envisioned, death and rebirth hand in hand. Psychological rebirth, whether it's even in our lifetime. There's ways that we can be very comforted by dreams of death and by talking about it.
Death is not a failure. I love that. It's compost for the universe, maybe. Interesting.
Exactly.
Okay, this is fabulous. So, this is Jenna Farr Ludwig, and we are talking about dreams and death. And you can get in touch with Jenna at her webpage, jennaffarludwig.com. And she also posts a beautiful Substack at jennaludwig.substack.com that you can follow. She's right here in the Bay Area. And we have much more to talk about. Like I said, we have some callers and some questions coming up. So we are broadcast live from the KSQD studios in Santa Cruz and co-broadcast live in San Jose by KCXU. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You are listening to The Dream Journal. My name is Catherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and I'd like to send out a caller. We have record streamers going on right now, so this is definitely a very interesting topic. And so letting you know that people all over the world are interested in their dreams, and if you want to nudge the algorithm to help spread interest in dreaming, please follow The Dream Journal on your favorite podcast app. You can also go to Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. But you can find out about upcoming shows on those social media platforms. And follow hashtag The Dream Journal and at Experiential Dreamwork. If you're inspired, please leave a rating and review. It's very helpful. But most importantly, tell your friends about the show. It's a great way to get people talking about their dreams, and that is the mission of the show. So please contact me if you'd like to be a guest on the show to talk about a new book or to let folks know about your dream-related offerings. Or if you know of somebody that you think would be a wonderful guest, just give me a contact at one of my social media links or at Catherine@ksqd.org, Katherine@ksqd.org. Next week, the Dream Journal welcomes Emily Cook and Kyle Napakarski, who will be talking about their work on what they call co-dreaming, in which they use large dream banks to discern cultural, political, and organizational trends. We'll be talking about some of the patterns they have found, including dreams related to the 2024 presidential election. Okay, today's guest is Jenna Farr Ludwig, and we are talking about dreams and dying. It's so great to have you on the show, Jenna.
Thank you. It's really great to be here.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we have two callers on the line right now. The first one so we have a Lenore and a David. So I'm going to start with Lenore because you were on the line first. And then David, hang on. We'll get to you in just a second. And so Lenore from Oakland, hello.
Hi.
Hi. So glad to have you calling in. What can we do for you?
Well, listening to knowing your show was coming up about death and dreaming, it reminded me that I had two dream images that came from dreams that I wanted to share.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm calling is because these two images made me feel that less afraid of dying, both of them. Mm-hmm. One was a dream where I was in a room and a spiritual presence, you might say an angel or like an angel, came behind me and wrapped his or her arms around me and kind of carried me like out of the room as a way of dying. And it was such a lovely embrace, like it felt so warm and loving, and it was like a way, and that's where I died, and this person took me to another realm where there were people in a circle, but it was that embrace that was very incredible. And the other was that I was dying and I was in an ocean, and it was a huge ocean, and I was sinking slowly in the ocean. And as I was sinking, I was losing consciousness and dying. But it felt very peaceful, not scary. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to share those two images and say that they make me feel less afraid.
Oh, Lenore, thank you. Those are beautiful, beautiful images.
Those are beautiful. Mm-hmm. What lovely images. Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's part of what the gift of dreams is they help us cope with our life, and they're also going to help us cope with our death.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lenore.
Thank you. Thanks, Lenore.
That was beautiful. All right, let me say hello to David from Berkeley.
Hello, Catherine.
Hi, David Jenkins, I do believe.
Hello, Jenna. Yes.
Hi, David.
Great. Thanks for calling. I'm really glad to have you on the show.
I was going to say exactly the same as Lenore, that I had a wonderful dream about dying. This was 25 years ago, and I have not been afraid of death since.
Oh, wow.
So, just quite magnificent. And my guess is if people talked about it more, we would get a lot of that kind of thing. My question was, some people have written about the idea that when someone passes away, that you go through a sequence of dreams. For instance, first of all, they tell you it was a mistake and a misunderstanding and they're perfectly well. Then you might talk to them on the telephone, and then there might be a message that they can't come. I wondered if Jenna had that kind of sequence, or if she was aware of of what unfolded for her.
Now, is this of people who are approaching their own death or a loved one's death, or
where a loved one had died?
Oh, so like after the person had died. Okay. Jenna, what's your experience there?
I have had those experiences. But not the sequential type thing that you're talking about. But like I was explaining about my friend Selena, she told me, well, I was mistaken. She was an atheist when she died, and she told me she was mistaken. So there's that. I've talked to my father-in-law after death, and he felt like he had made some mistakes, and he wanted to stay around and support people in his life that had been affected by him. That's one thing. Am I answering your question? I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Good.
The dreams are a process that helps us come to terms with the loss of a loved one. Yeah.
I think that is true. I think particularly when, like, the woman who dreamed about her mother and me dreaming about Jean, those are coming. We were young. He was so young when he died. He was 42. And so our life sort of continued in my dream world.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Nice.
So those sequences, it seems like the whole kind of same sequence of going that people go through when they're accepting their own death or something difficult in their life. It makes you think of is it Kubler-Ross, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, those series of dreams.
Right.
Have you had experiences like that, David?
I've had it with severe breakups. So symbolic death.
That's a loss. That's definitely a death.
It's definitely a death.
It's definitely a kind of death. The other question I had was I tend to associate death in dreams with rebirth. And I know Jenna's thinking about it in a different way, but symbols like eggs and trees and growth I often come very quickly afterwards. When I've dealt with dreams that were about death, and these were different in the sense that they weren't necessarily about a real death, a physical death.
Right.
But I wondered if Jenna had any experience of rebirth symbols coming along with this.
Well, me personally, I can't speak to that, but I believe that that our dreams show that there is a psychic continuation, like our psyche continues, our consciousness continues. So that is a form of rebirth to me, and a lot of dreams do speak to that. With the beautiful scenes, almost like near-death experiences, like now I'm going to a different realm. It's not, my body is dissolving, but it's almost like the butterfly, when you go into the cocoon and everything dissolves and you come out a butterfly. And that's kind of a symbol of death too, as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And yes, a lot of dreams are like that. And Christopher Kerr, I think, noticed some of those types of dreams too. And that's why they're so comforting, is that people see that there is a continuation of them, and not their body, but yes, of them.
So this is, and it's the whole spectrum of things is possible. And I just really was thinking of Easter, like all of our symbols of Easter having to do with rebirth and eggs and grass and chicks and let's get some bunnies in there. But because after all, in the great Christian tradition, Jesus died and was born again, and so that there is even in the Christian tradition, there is knowledge of like what happens after death, that death is not the end. And
a rebirth.
The rebirth.
Symbolism,
Well, thank you, David. This was great.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Catherine.
David.
Okay.
Thank you, Jenna. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
All right, we have something. We have another caller, but I want to, before we get to the other caller, just hold on for a second, caller. We have something from my engineer, Rick Kleffel, has something he wanted to say to Jenna.
It struck me, Jenna, that death and dreams have one thing in common. If we presume life after death, we presume that there's consciousness after death at a time when we're not getting any input from our body. When we dream, we experience consciousness with no input from our body. We make it all up ourselves.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I had not made that connection.
Could be considered dreams could be considered a form of death.
Well, there may be some connection. I mean, like in this Tibetan tradition there is, and I think Rick's kind of implying that.
A sneak preview.
Yeah.
Sneak preview.
Well,
okay.
thank you.
That's
thank you, Rick.
something to think about.
Something to consider. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, now let me turn to Dylan from Florida. Hello, Dylan.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Doing good, thanks.
Hi, Dylan.
Hey, very interesting show, Jenna. I'm really interested in it. I don't know that I really believed in reincarnation until I had a dream a little over a decade ago, and I didn't journal my dreams that often either until I had this dream.
Oh.
It lasted about an hour and a half. That, like, when I fell asleep and woke up, I checked the time, and this dream seemed to last. It literally went through lifetimes. It was crazy. It started kind of like a mandala. It started in what my mind considered the lowest realms of death in life, where I was a very violent person and I was in the military, but it was like maybe even like Greek or Roman military, and then it went all the way up through like modern military times where I was a soldier over and over and over again and lived that life and death dream. And it was kind of like a movie montage or sped up in time-lapse photography. I lived filming. Like, I lived these dreams so fast, but it slowed down in my mind. You know how your mind and time are strange that way.
Yeah. Yep.
And it moved through different, like, not just the violence, it moved up through the realm or the karmic wheel of going all the way up to love, which seemed to be like the most pleasing part of this dream, to where I had like met up with the same people over and over in different lifetimes. And this dream took place, I mean, I lived and died, I don't know how many thousands of times in an hour and a half.
Wow.
So it blew my mind to really like believe in, karmic, the reincarnation idea, and just that death is definitely a transition, symbolically or actually. I don't know. I just wanted to share that time is so relative to us, and this life, like you were talking about, I thought it was an interesting point that we may actually meet ourselves in this lifetime, like part of ourselves. So strange. Who knows how our energies actually work, if we're bonded with many creatures or many people's different energies, or we just have our own soul, or who knows? But it's very, very interesting questions. I'll hang up and let you guys.
Well, thank you, Dylan. That's really profound.
Wow, thank you, Dylan. That is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
That is a real reincarnation dream. Thank you.
Well,
talk to you guys later.
All right, thanks, Dylan.
Bye.
Yeah, boy, this is definitely a hot topic. People are very interested, and this is something I'm so fascinated by as well. And so the whole idea of reincarnation, So we have. Oh, I see the phone ringing again. But we have about 90 seconds before it comes through.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before the call comes through?
Yeah. It takes a minute to get transferred over from the board. So this idea of like that the Dylan had this dream about all these various reincarnations, and it could be one of those things is whether it's literally true or it's comforting. It doesn't matter in a certain way that these kind of dreams are helpful. Like these kind of dreams that if they provide us some comfort, some ability to continue, some hope for the future, for hope for who we are, and then I think that's valuable.
I do too. and people who write about death believe the same way.
Yep.
And have dealt with therapists who have dealt with people dying. It's really important to have that comfort. You know, when you're looking death in the face, and that's one of the things I wanted to make sure listeners understand is that I don't romanticize death.
Right.
I don't, I am into dreams and death, but I don't romanticize it. It's the most frightening thing we have to face.
Mm-hmm. It is
one of the most frightening things. I think as a mother, I think death of one of my children would be more frightening. But
yeah, I agree.
Yep.
Right, and we certainly don't want people being so comforted that they choose death over the complexities of life, just because it is I was suicidal for quite a few years in my life, and but even at the time I realized that would be a cop out. That I feel like I've worked hard to become who I am and to choose this life and to the work I've done during that life, even when I was so much younger then, that there was some way that was a cop out. That was it, So anyway, I think that's just something to say.
It was, and look what you've accomplished.
Yes, exactly.
You are, you're impacting people's lives with this beautiful show.
Totally. So thank you. So sweet.
I'm really glad you didn't do it.
Oh, me too. I am very much so too. So we have another caller, Ray from Santa Cruz.
Hello, Catherine and Jenna, and I would like to emphasize what Jenna just said too. I'm so glad you're there.
Thank you, Ray. That's great. Glad to have you calling in.
You're in my living room.
Yes. Excellent.
So I'm wondering, okay, the whole topic of death is really one that intrigues me because I had a friend who was a medium. She passed away about 2 years ago, but I know of about a dozen people I know who had already passed who she contacted. It was just super profound for me and for other people, like a lady I know whose father died and a bunch of other stuff. But anyway, what I'm trying to get is, I wonder if Jenna knows any, resources for trying to cultivate that, like within my life or somebody else who wanted to, research is there any way to, become a medium away, not one already, but, because there are a lot of people I would still love to talk to who are on the other side that, I think that the death and life are so intertwined that, we would be better off as a species if we knew how to understand what goes on the other side a little bit better to help us in our daily lives. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. What do you think about that, Jenna?
Well, I don't necessarily have any resources of mediums, but I think Robert Monroe's book, have you ever read much about near-death experiences? And that...
No, I've read one book so long ago I don't really remember what it was, but
Robert Monroe, huh? I don't know this book either.
Robert Monroe is he wrote about near-death experiences, and can I think of the title right now? No, because I wrote it. I read it 40 years ago. But there's a lot of books, and there's tons of information about near-death experiences right now. But as far as mediums go, you can go on the internet, and there are mediums in California, and some are really good ones. You can get referrals to really good ones, and you can find out about them. But I have gone to mediums, and I can't say I ever experienced a super profound experience with a medium about communicating with a loved one, but my dreams have been more profound about that. So
maybe that's the way. It's the dreams of the communicators.
I can't really lead you there, but I'm sure that there are resources out there. If you look on the internet, there are resources.
But I was wondering one of the things, because the way that she got her messages were through images, and the dreams that I have are very image oriented.
Right.
There's kind of a crossover there in my mind, where she would see things like, I'm seeing a rose, but it's not like a regular rose. It's like made out of metal or something. And that, and that happened to be my friend who was a welder who did high-rise buildings, and she picked up on him making like little roses out of steel that he would give to people and sell on the, whatever. But I mean, it goes on and on. It's always been pretty profound whenever she's done a reading, but I don't have that resource anymore. I'd like it back.
Oh, okay. Well, it's something to consider, and maybe we can track down that Robert Monroe book. And it would generally change society if we did learn what actually it did happen and were able to reliably communicate with. People, what people have died, and what would that be like? Something to think about. Thank you so much, Ray. Glad to have you call in.
Thank you, Ray.
Okay, good. Well, Jenna, this has been a fabulous show, and it looks like we're not going to have time to talk about synchronicity, which I know you're working on a book about.
Well, I'll have to come back.
Absolutely. You took the words right out of my mouth. We'll have you come back when you're farther along and you want to be thinking about your thoughts, or even when you're getting ready to publish. So this has been an amazing conversation. This is Jenna Farr Ludwig, and you can contact her at her webpage, Jenna Farr, Farr, Ludwig, LUDWIG.com, and also her Substack, Jenna L. Ludwig. .substack.com. Are there other ways for folks to contact you, or do you have any other? My Substack. Actually, the easiest way to find me on Substack is called Spicy Nina. Okay.
Conversations at the Homestead, and the Nina is Spicy Nina is what my grandchildren call me.
Oh, really?
So, there's a story behind that too. There's always a story.
Yep. Spicy Nina.
But anyway, Spicy Nina, Conversations at the Homestead, and that's my Substack.
Okay, great. So, do you have any final comments or encouragements for our listeners, Jenna?
Well, I think just pay attention to your dreams, and most dreams, like you said, death dreams do not mean that you're actually physically dying. Mm-hmm. They're transformation dreams. And also there are ways to work with your dreams. Be sure to journal your dreams, because there's so much guidance. I mean, in any sense, whether you're dreaming about death or anything else, journaling is good. Mm-hmm. And the creative arts and dreams, like paint them, write poetry about them, make dream shields, do role playing. Those are all things that bring your symbols to life.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Jenna. It has been a pleasure, and maybe we'll see you in October down here in Santa Cruz for our Festival of Dreams, a dream conference, October 10th or 12th.
Been thinking about that.
That would be lovely. Okay, thanks, Jenna. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
It's been a real pleasure being here.
Oh, wonderful. All right. So thank you all for listening. The Dream Journal is produced at the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, and we are live every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific at ksqd.org. The podcast is released on the Monday after the show. It spreads interest in dreaming when you subscribe, rate, and review. I am Catherine Bell. You can find out about my dream coaching practice at experientialdreamwork.com. Find out about the Festival of Dreams in Santa Cruz at festivalofdreams.net. You can email me at Catherine@ksqd.org, Katherine@ksqd.org. Follow Experiential Dreamwork and hashtag The Dream Journal on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to find out about upcoming shows and pod drops. I'd like to thank Rick Kleffel, engineer and music creator, audio editing by Suki Wessling, phones by Tony Russimano, and intro and outro pieces are both by Mood Science. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, take a minute to write down your dream and bring it to the next Dream Journal.